Okay, good. We're live.
Great.
Live on the internet. My name's Ksantikara. This is Devamitra.
Yeah, I'm Devamitra.
Devamitra. And behind the camera at the moment, we have Ipali and Seb, who I think were telling us they'd usually be here on a Wednesday or a Friday. But today they're thrilled to be here with Devamitra and I on a Monday evening. So we'll just wait a few minutes until 7 o'clock and then we'll begin. In the meantime, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I mean, I'm particularly glad to be here because I've not been teaching at the LBC for quite a while now. At the beginning of the lockdown, in fact, the day before the lockdown started, I was shifted out of my community upstairs because one of our community members had COVID. And being over 70 with an underlying health condition, which at that time was considered to put me under threat, to make me more vulnerable, the most sensible thing was to go away. And so I've been away for 9.5 weeks. But I'm so glad to be back, so glad to have this opportunity to teach again. Not that I've not been teaching in the meantime. I might mention something about that later, but so happy to be back at the LBC and can't wait for the centre to open again so I can see you all live. I mean, not just on a computer screen, but in the flesh, as it were. So I'm really looking forward to that, but it might take a while yet, I suppose.
And worth saying, as Devamitra hinted, we live together, don't we, Devamitra, upstairs?
Yeah, we certainly do.
Cavity, so we're allowed to be this close to each other.
Yeah, in fact, my room is right next door to Ksantikara, so we're that close upstairs.
It's all perfectly legal, kosher.
Yeah, and it's very intimate here. Our knees are touching.
Just down here, I don't know whether you can see. Anyone joining us yet, please?
Yeah, we have 34 people with us so far.
You can say hello in the chat box if you like, and you might get a mention like on the radio when someone calls out your name. It's all very exciting.
Harvey is saying hi from Rusper.
Hello, Harvey.
And Charlie is saying hi from Woodford Green.
Anne from Woodford Green.
Great. Julie Watson, Essex.
Hello, Julie Watts in Essex.
And a few more people from around East London. Michael Curtis from upstairs.
Oh,
Michael
right.
Curtis.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Michael. Michael lives with us too. But he's not here, he's upstairs.
Adam is here from the winter retreat.
Adam from the winter retreat. Do you remember Adam?
Of course, yeah, sure. Hello, Adam. Yeah.
Adam and I were making shrines together on the winter retreat this year. And Devamitra comes on the winter retreat each year to just sort of be around, don't you? You're not technically on the team, but you just sort of
just
be a friend.
A very, very kind of lazy sort of hanger on, really. I don't have any responsibilities. I'm just there, having fun, talking to people, mostly.
So we've just got about a minute left and then we'll start proper. Do carry on arriving to those that haven't arrived yet. I suppose you can't hear me, but do carry on arriving if you haven't arrived yet, and make yourself comfortable. There'll be a short meditations part this evening, but mainly it will be a talk from Devamitra, actually, maybe with some questions from me. But so do make yourself comfortable. We'll start in just under a minute, probably. In the meantime, we could just say hello again.
Hello, everybody. Hello to all the new arrivals.
This is Devamitra. My name is Ksantikara.
Yeah, I suppose quite a few of you might not have encountered me before because I've been away for quite a while. But I'm back now. I'm back with a bang, hopefully.
So maybe we'll make a start since it's 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
We've been saying our names, but just for, I don't know, the third or fourth time. My name's Ksantikara.
And I'm Devamitra.
And we live together upstairs in Sakavati.
And we're next door neighbours.
We are next door neighbours.
Yeah, I mean, he lives in the room right next to me.
And when I originally moved into Sakavati, I came just as a guest for a month. This is about 4 years ago, I think. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So about 4 years ago, I came to Sakavati, this men's community at the London Buddhist Centre. And I just was a guest. And there wasn't actually a room for me to move into. But there was a room coming up in a few months' time. And Devamitra suggested we share a room, didn't you? I
did. We shared a room. I mean, I'm what, 40 odd years older than
40 odd years older than me.
So an old man living with a young man.
It was a very interesting month of my life. I was very grateful to come in. And we've been friends ever since.
We have. Yeah, we've been very good friends.
So it's really...
I'm his Kalyana Mitra, if that means anything to any of you.
That will mean something to some of you. Kalyana Mitra means something like spiritual friend. It's sort of akin... It's got tones of mentorship, I suppose.
No, I don't like that word.
No. Yeah, we'll stick to spiritual friendship.
Yeah, I try to keep him out of trouble, which is not easy.
No, it's not easy. He does his best. Tonight we're going to be exploring this theme of breaking through meaninglessness. And the way we're going to do that is, well, in a few moments, I'll lead us in a short meditation. And then after that, well, mainly I'll hand over to Devamitra, although I might say one or two things as he goes along, we'll see. But mainly I'll hand over to Devamitra, who will talk on this theme of breaking through meaninglessness.
That's right.
Meaninglessness. And
not my title. I didn't choose it.
It wasn't Devamitra's title, and he might say more about that later on. And let's see what he feels about the title. But anyway, the title is Breaking Through Meaninglessness. And, well, I won't say much because Devamitra will go into it in much more detail. But yeah, I was just thinking about these two metaphors of breaking through and of meaning. And Devamitra and I talked a little bit about what he's going to talk about. And both of us really like this metaphor, or respond to this metaphor of breaking through. It's a strong metaphor, isn't it? It's definitely an act of doing something. It sounds like it's difficult. It sounds like it's challenging. It sounds like it's got some kind of grrr in it. You've got to do something. You've got to break through. It's kind of got an element of smashing through something, which I find, well, both quite exciting. And then in my experience over the last 6 or 7 years of practicing Buddhism and meditation, I also sometimes don't like it, because breaking through in metaphor and in rhetoric and in ideals sounds exciting. In reality, it's got this kind of just sense of being difficult,
Threatening too.
or threatening. And then, of course, we're talking about breaking through meaninglessness, which I guess means breaking into meaning, I suppose.
Well, I hope so.
I hope so. And I think, well, meaning is quite a large topic or theme. And in fact, last week, all of the evening classes were on that topic. They were all meaning, it might have been the week before, sorry, but yeah, meaning in lots of different ways. And there was a really good talk by Devamitra. It might have been last Monday, it might have been the Monday before, on the meaning of meaning. So I'd recommend watching that. But yeah, meaning, just, ideals, values, things that make life worth living, things that move us, things that we find beautiful. All these things are kind of contained within meaning. And then, of course, we've got the title of Breaking Through Meaninglessness, which might be closer to our experience. My daily experience might feel meaningless. I've definitely had phases, particularly in this coronavirus, stuck in my room atmosphere.
Yes, I can corroborate that.
Of meaninglessness. Certainly, I've been talking to Devamitra about, well, being confused about where's the meaning in my life. Do I fully believe in it all? What's changed? Quite a few things have changed for me, actually, in the last couple of months. So we'll be looking at later, after we meditate together, at meaninglessness, and how to break through this feeling of our lives not having meaning or not going anywhere. How do we break through that?
Hopefully.
We're going to give it a go. But no promises. So I think in the meantime, why don't we meditate together to start? So we'll only meditate for about 10 minutes, just to kind of arrive here together, and I'll guide us through it. So even if you're completely new to meditation, that would be completely fine. What I'd recommend is, just sit as comfortably as you can. So if you're seated somewhere, don't worry too much about moving. We're only going to be there for 10 minutes. But sitting on a chair would be really good. So Devamitra and I are both sitting on chairs. Sometimes people think or feel that meditation needs to happen on the floor for it to be, I don't know, spiritual or religious or proper. But it's definitely fine to sit on a chair. If you do sit on the floor, then just make sure your knees are supported. And I don't know if you can see it here, but Devamitra's got a cushion to place his hands on. You can sort of place your hands on something. Yes, let's sit as comfortably as we can, and I'll lead us in a short meditation. So yes, making sure you're comfortable in your seat. Or if you're sitting on the floor, that you feel supported. And if you haven't already, closing your eyes. Allow yourself to really sink into the ground. Allowing the cushion or the chair or the floor, really allowing it to take your weight. I like to think of myself as a mountain, sinking down heavy into the ground, and yet rising majestically into the sky. Seeing if you can have this sense of your weight traveling down, but also this feeling of energetic alertness as you rise up. In meditation, we're often trying to achieve a sense of relaxed alertness. It might help to roll your shoulder blades down your back slightly, opening your chest a little. Then take a moment to notice the muscles of your face. We use our faces all day long, holding all different manner of facial expressions. Let's just see if we can put that down for now. Notice any holding on around the eyes or our mouth. Are you clenching your jaw? There's no need to do any of that right now. With your hands supported, perhaps your hands are sitting in your lap or on a cushion. You can let go of some of the weight of your arms, allowing your shoulders to drop as you do so. Widening the gap between your ear and your shoulder. And are you holding on in your belly? Many of us will hold our bellies in and upward slightly. It's just seeing if we can let that go. Do you have a sense of holding on or bracing in your legs? Or perhaps in your thighs? Quite often when we sit in meditation, we sort of keep our legs as if we're able to jump up at any moment. But there's no need to do that right now. You can really let your legs, your feet, your thighs, once again, just let them really sink into the ground. Sinking down into the ground whilst rising into the sky. Combing through the experience of our body, softening any holding on or tension where we can. With our relaxed bodies and our steady posture, we can start to turn our attention towards the breath. Placing our awareness on the breath as it enters and exits our body. Placing our awareness on the sensations of the breath. You can allow the breath to come in at its natural pace and out, and mark it silently to ourselves with a 1. In and out, 2. In and out, 3. Placing a number at the end of each out-breath, allowing the breath to stay at its natural rhythm. Placing a number, counting to 10, and then starting again at 1. And if we get distracted, that's completely fine. Just come back to the breath. Allow the breath to come in and out. 1. In and out. 2. All the way to 10. And then starting again at 1. And now just making a subtle change to our awareness of our breath. And placing a number now at the beginning of each in-breath. 1. In and out. 2. In and out. Once again to 10. And then starting again at 1. Placing our attention at the beginning of each in-breath. And now for these last few moments of this short meditation, we can just let go of any effort we've been making. There's no longer any need to have a particular awareness of our breath. Just taking this final minute, just sit here quietly. Nothing to do but just sit here. Okay, good. So, yeah, you can open your eyes and sit comfortably. Well, that was just a very short 10-15 minute meditation that we just did together. If you are new to meditation, I'd really recommend you go to the London Buddhist Centre online website, and you could sign up to one of our morning meditations and learn the mindfulness of breathing, of which that was just a small part in more detail. But in the meantime, if you're just joining us and you weren't here at the beginning, my name's Ksantikara and this is Devamitra. And well, this evening we've been given the theme of breaking through meaninglessness. And well, there might be time for questions at the end, so we'll see if there's time for questions at the end. But if we don't get to them, maybe we apologize in advance. Yeah, so we're going to explore breaking through meaninglessness. And well, Devamitra and I were looking earlier at the other titles this week, and we were thinking, you know, there's escaping, there was overcoming, there was resolving. I can't remember what the other one was, but this one was breaking through. Breaking through. So I don't know, what do you make of that as a starting point? Breaking through.
Breaking through meaninglessness. Well, of course, I've given quite a bit of thought to meaninglessness. Not meaningless, breaking through to begin with, because I thought it was perhaps quite significant that I was asked to speak on this particular matter, or, you know, the sort of the main topic, of course, is meaninglessness, but breaking through meaninglessness. It has a particular feel to it, a particular ring to it. And so some of you who are familiar with me will probably be aware that I've often said of myself that I'm an aggressive male. I've always been an aggressive male. I'm still an aggressive male. But even though I've said that on a number of occasions, several people have come up to me and said, look, it's not at all the impression that you give us. We don't see you quite in that sort of way. But I'm not doing this, I'm not describing myself in this way lightly. In fact, this afternoon I looked up into some of my old correspondence files. And when I was young, I received a number of letters from my teacher, the founder of the Triratna community, Progyan Sangharakshita. And on this occasion, what had happened, I was looking at a particular letter. In fact, I'd been looking it out. And I'd done something which he wasn't very happy with. And I'd heard about this through the grapevine. And so I wrote to him and said, look, is it true that you said blah, blah? I can't remember what it was. And I got quite a long letter back. And there was a lot for me to take in from what he said. And it wasn't an easy letter to digest in some ways, although it was a bit of a relief too, because it helped me to sort of have a better understanding of my temperament. And what he said was that it seems that there is a strong component of aggressiveness in your character. And so that was the first thing he said. He then went on to say that that's not necessarily a bad thing. it can in fact be quite an asset, but it's an extremely difficult asset to manage well. And that was his main message to me, really, because clearly I had not been managing this valuable asset very, very well. And so I had to learn to do that. The sort of note of uplift in the letter, if you like, although I didn't find the letter depressing at all or anything like that, I found it very helpful. In fact, he said that what you need to do is to break through with that energy into the wisdom of the Buddha. So that was not an idea that was new to me, but it's quite something when your own teacher sort of gives you a very pointed teaching like that. So I learned two things. I learned that I was indeed an aggressive man, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because that's simply energy. We simply have to get it moving in the right channel. And ultimately, that channel is to gain enlightenment. So that's why I describe myself in this way. I don't think in terms of temperament, I've changed that much. I hope I've learned to deal in a more positive way with my aggressive character and turn that to positive and creative use. I think I've achieved something of that in the course of my life, but still, I'm also aware there's quite a long way to go. So that's why I introduced myself in this way. And on top of that, I was thinking, well, why would I have been chosen to speak on this theme? And of course, this might be total speculation. In fact, frankly, it is speculation, but I don't mind. Occasionally, it seems to me to be fair enough to speculate. Some time ago, not that long ago, in fact, probably 2 or 3 years back, someone came to see me, a young man came to see me, and he's rather earnest about what he wanted to talk to me about. And so we finally got down to what he wanted to talk to me about. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about manhood. And of course, I said, well, okay, what do you want, from what point of view? And he said, well, I'd like to know how to become a man. And so I immediately thought, I said to him, well, why are you asking me? And he then went on to say, well, he said, you're one of only 2 alpha males around the LBC. And naturally, of course, immediately I want to know, well, who's the other one? You know, if there's 2 of them, as an alpha male, you need to know who your rival is. So he said, is it all right to say?
Yeah, he won't mind. He'll like it.
I think he might. Okay. Well, he said Amala Yodin. You know, Amala Yodin, the big, muscular, tall, handsome, ex-cage fighting Irishman. No, I tell you, it took me 70 years to wait for that compliment to be associated with a man like that, and I was deeply, deeply flattered. So anyway, I'm sure, in fact, that there are now a few more alpha males around the LBC than perhaps there were then. Perhaps there were even more then. Perhaps this young man just didn't recognize them as such. You know, clearly I'm perceived in this sort of way. I am a bit of an aggressive character. And that fits in, I think, with this idea of breaking through. Because I suppose, in a way, my whole approach to the Buddhist life, to the spiritual life, has been quite aggressive. It's in my temperament, it's in my character. I've had to learn to work with it. And so, you know, it's not for me to I don't like to think in terms of being kind to myself, for example. I've never sort of approached things in that kind of way. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, or that it's a bad thing to do. It just didn't suit me temperamentally. And so my whole approach to life, in fact, is rather like this. When I was diagnosed with cancer, 3.5 years ago, one of the first thoughts that occurred to me was this could kill me. But immediately the next thought that followed on was, or I will kill it. And that sort of characterizes this approach, if you like, of this rather aggressive approach to most things that I do. I bring a lot of energy to it, or at least I try to. Getting a bit old now, so it's not so easy. So breaking through from something negative into something positive at times will be part of our experience in leading the Buddhist life. And in fact, Sangharakshita, my teacher, gave a talk which was very, very popular at the time, called Breaking Through into Buddhahood. And we listened to that talk many, many times when we were younger. Very often when we go on a weekend retreat, we wouldn't have order members giving us talks or whatever. We wouldn't have anybody giving us talks. We'd sit down and listen to a tape recording of one of Bante's lectures. And one of the most popular lectures that we had for our weekend retreats was this lecture, Breaking Through into Buddhahood. And at that time, this would have been in the sort of early 70s. We were all sub 25ers. Most of us were anyway. There was a sprinkling of a few people older than that, but most of us were very young, very raw, really. And this kind of approach of breaking through really stimulated our imagination. So the Buddhist life, the spiritual life, sometimes may involve us using, let's say, some degree of force, or we may experience it in that way, or even perhaps violence. You break through. It's like you're smashing through something. Something quite dramatic, and so this is, this indicates that the spiritual life is not always just a sort of quiet, peaceful affair. Perhaps it is to a large extent, perhaps for the most part, but occasionally there might be some experience where we break through something, where we have to even almost force our way through something, push things to one side, push obstacles to one side. So temperamentally, this has been the approach that I've adopted throughout my life, and I continue to do so. So yes, this idea of breaking through, it connects also with, of course, a number of incidents from the Buddhist tradition, or little stories. One that immediately comes to my mind is the story of, I can't remember the name of the monk, but there was a monk who was one of several hundred in pursuit of the sixth patriarch of the Chan tradition in China. So what had happened was that this particular, Hui Neng, who was the sixth patriarch, had succeeded to the patriarchate. He'd been recognized by his own teacher, the fifth patriarch, as his successor. And as part of that, he was given the insignia of the patriarchate, which was a begging bowl and a robe. And so late at night, as this was handed over to him, his master, the fifth patriarch, said, "You must leave immediately. It's too dangerous for you to stay here." He was staying in a monastery, so goodness knows what was going on in the monastery at that time. But anyway, 2 months later, he'd walked a long way south, and he'd reached a mountain, a particular mountain, when he realized that he was being pursued by 200 or so, or several hundred, I think the text says, several hundred people who were in pursuit of the robe and the bowl. So they came up to him, and their leader was a monk, a very aggressive monk. In fact, he was a military man. He had been a military man before he became a monk, but he was now a monk. And he said, "Hand over the bowl and the robe." And Hui Neng immediately threw them down, cast them down to the floor, and said, "They're just insignia. They mean nothing. Take them." So this man, of course, was delighted. So he tried to pick them up, and he couldn't. For some reason, we don't know why he couldn't, but he just could not do it. Almost perhaps as if they'd adhered to the rock floor. So he was unable to lift them up. But then he had a realization. He knew that he was mistaken, that the bowl and the robe was not why he'd really come. And so sort of immediately, extraordinarily, he turned to Hui Neng and said, "I don't want the bowl and the robe. I've come for it's the Dharma I've really come for. Teach me." And Hui Neng immediately set about doing that. And shortly afterwards, it's said in the story, this man gained enlightenment. It's probably unlikely that he gained enlightenment in the full sense, but it's clear at least that he had a very significant spiritual experience. which sort of got him well and truly onto the transcendental path. Now, what's interesting about this story is that this man was leading a gang, effectively, to get the bowl and the robe from the sixth patriarch. So he's a man of tremendous energy. Obviously, all that energy was heading in the wrong direction, but for some reason or other, he was just able to sort of turn all that energy in a different direction, in a positive and a creative direction. And so he gained, well, some, as I say, he gained some significant spiritual insight at the very least. So if you've got all your energy available, it means that pretty much anything is possible. One of the problems that we face, unfortunately, is that a lot of our energy is not available to us. We have bags of energy, far more energy than probably we realize. I remember Bhante on one occasion saying that he thought that most people were operating on about 4 to 5% of their total energy, and that perhaps a few exceptional individuals might be operating on something like 8 or 9%. So we have potential. The energy's there. It's within us, but we need to tap it. We need to bring it into focus to sort of give it a positive object, a positive goal. And this particular monk who was in pursuit of Huineng managed to do just that. But it's a challenge that we all have to face we all have to face. So I said that this idea of breaking through suggests something forceful, something even potentially violent. And this is just one example that I could give you to illustrate that. Perhaps one more, and then I'll move on to looking at the specific, well, whatever meaninglessness might be. I mentioned that, maybe I didn't mention, but certainly it is the case that in Buddhist tradition there's a very, very strong association, close association between wisdom and hatred. So that hatred seeks to destroy its object. If you really hate somebody, well, you want to destroy them. Just as ignorance, wisdom seeks to destroy hatred. So it's, in a way, it's quite a violent image. You've got hatred at the heart of it. And this image is very often symbolized by the flaming sword of Manjushri, the great bodhisattva of wisdom. So you have this strong association between hatred and wisdom. And I mention it now because I meant to mention it earlier. When I received that letter from Sangharashtra, he said, it would seem that in terms of Buddhist tradition, you are probably a hate type. So if you're of that temperament like me, well, there's hope for you. You can still make some progress. In fact, it can be an asset. Okay, so there's this you have this idea of force or even violence being involved in a certain sense in the spiritual life. Not violence against others, but the sort of power, if you like, to destroy the inner obstacles, the obstacles which hold you back, whatever they might be, usually negative emotions, conditionings, and so on and so forth. So this evening we're looking at breaking through meaninglessness. I've never really thought about this. I've never thought about meaning, particularly in relation to my life. I know it's quite a common theme that we talk about at the centre, but I've never really given it very much thought. I didn't. Well, I suppose you could say I have the benefit of not having been to university, so I wasn't taught how to think about abstract things, and I've never bothered to, frankly. So I never particularly thought about my life in terms of meaning, and I don't know that until I started to think about this talk this evening that I could have easily identified the experience of meaninglessness. However, I think it's clear that I have had those experiences. It's just that I've given them different names. So I'd like to have a look at that in a moment. But because I've not really thought about this before, I did do a little bit of research in preparation for this talk. And the first thing that I did, therefore, was I watched the trailer of Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, because I thought that might give me a clue. But I quickly realised it wasn't going to go anywhere. I didn't watch I didn't watch the whole film. It looks like it's got a few good gags, but it's not a very serious film, as you can imagine. So I didn't learn anything from that. So I'm once more thrown back on my own resources. So yes, breaking through meaninglessness. I'm thinking about this. I couldn't really think of a clear example from Buddhist tradition, but let's come on to that in a moment. I did eventually come up with one, but let's think about this idea of meaninglessness. It seems that meaning and having a meaningful life is important for us. I'm sure that's true. I mean, in all seriousness, I don't doubt that or question that at all. But sometimes we have an experience of meaninglessness. And I was just wondering, especially because of the lockdown, if some of you might have been feeling that a bit, because you've been able to go nowhere for quite a long time. I know that it's easing up now, but for many weeks, you were not able to go very far or do very much. You weren't able to pursue all your normal interests. Not able to see all your friends, perhaps even any of your friends. And this must have been felt particularly acutely if you were living on your own, as I'm sure probably quite a few of you watching this will have been. And it might have really thrown you back on your resources and made you reflect, well, what is the meaning of my life? Do I have a meaning? What's the purpose of life? These questions perhaps would have sprung up for you. And perhaps you're left feeling that you don't know that you do have a meaning, not anything that can that gives yourself a really sort of satisfying meaning. I mean, what do you normally find your meaning in? I mean, most of us find little things, little sort of ways of distracting ourselves, enjoying ourselves, going to parties, whatever. I mean, I don't do that now, a bit old for that. But I certainly did it a little bit when I was younger. But my experience of parties, for example, was that they never satisfied me. I cannot think of a single party that I enjoyed. And oddly enough, the other night I was watching from the back of the London Buddhist Centre, looking down onto a balcony of a house behind the centre, and there were two terraces there, and it was packed with people. They were having a party. They were making quite a lot of noise as it happened, but clearly there wasn't much social distancing going on there. And so probably I imagine there's more of this going on all around at the moment. People have had enough of the lockdown. They're feeling frustrated. And so they try to get back to all those things that they were doing before lockdown. But maybe some of you, especially those of you who are watching this evening, have realized, well, I want to know more about life. I want to come to a better and a deeper understanding of my own life. And even perhaps to consider, well, is there a higher meaning to life that I can pursue? I certainly hope that some of you would have had those kinds of reflections. But coming back to the idea of meaninglessness, I try to think, well, what in my experience could be described in that sort of way? And I could really only think of one period of my life, and it was something which built up gradually. What happened was that, from a very early age, I knew that I wanted to be on the stage, and I eventually became a professional actor, and I was a working actor for several years, 3 or 4 years, I think. And it was my dream job. And I managed to get into the company I most wanted to work in. I was very, very lucky, very fortunate. But from the moment I started working, I began to feel a little bit disillusioned. The theatre was not quite what I had built it up in my mind. I'd over-idealized, I'd absolutely idealized the theatre. And so it was hardly surprising that the reality of the theatre just didn't match that. And so I felt disappointed. And I began to feel some degree of disillusionment. And I think that experience of disillusionment just gradually progressed. It grew stronger and stronger as time passed, until in the end, I just couldn't continue. I tried to give up my career 2 times before I succeeded. I did succeed on the 3rd time, but I only succeeded because I found an alternative. I went to the Archway Centre of the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order in North London in 1972. I met my teacher, Bhante Sangharakshita, and from there onwards, I had meaning in my life, real meaning, a much higher meaning than I'd ever had before. And it's not that before that, that there was no meaning at all in my life as an actor. Certainly, I wanted to work, do good work, to work in the classics, Shakespeare, etc. And I was very fortunate in being able to do some of that. But somehow it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. It was a reasonable. It gave my life some meaning, but not enough. In the end, it proved to be unsatisfactory. And I think that it's for me, it's that experience of unsatisfactoriness which I would identify perhaps as what we might call an experience of meaninglessness. The things that we invest our energies in do not deliver very often. We have far too great expectations of them. Our expectations are unrealistic, and so we feel let down. That's clearly that is an experience of unsatisfactoriness. And that's a painful experience, one that very often we try to avoid, as we often say when we give our talks. So for me, I think that's what I would identify as meaninglessness, this sense of unsatisfactoriness. And if you've no idea, if you can't sort of place that in any sort of higher context, such as we get from the Dharma, of course your life is going to feel bereft of meaning. And you may feel, you just don't know what to do with your life. Before I came into contact with the Dharma, when the disillusionment with my career had set in, I felt quite helpless. I didn't know which way to look, and I was very, very fortunate to find a way out. And as you can see, I've never gone away. So there are all sorts of things that we think or hope will give meaning to our life, but usually, unfortunately, they don't. I mean, the other sort of thing I over-invested in my youth was the idea of romantic love. Find the ideal girl and, succeed with your career, and what bliss that would be. But again, I did sort of find my ideal girl. I was very, very much in love with my last girlfriend the girlfriend I had when I got involved in the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, but it didn't work out. That too fell way short of my expectations. My fault, of course. But this is what happens in life. We gravitate towards things which we think or hope will give our life meaning, but which in the end fall short. So we need to find something which will take us, something which has a higher value, a higher meaning that we can pursue. And I think, clearly that's what I've tried to do ever since I came into contact with the Dharma. The Dharma has become at the center of my life. It's become the meaning and the purpose of my life. But even doing that, I found that there's been changes into what the meaning is in a certain sort of way. That probably doesn't make much sense, but as you get older and as your life changes and you gain an experience, you start to see things very, very differently. Because you've got that much more life experience and you've got the support of the Dharma, which broadens, perhaps deepens, hopefully does deepen your perception of things. I had a particularly vivid experience of this sort when I was undergoing cancer treatment, especially when I was undergoing chemotherapy, which is, believe me, not a pleasant experience. But very often I would walk to Victoria Park, the park close to London Buddhist Centre. Sometimes I could hardly get there, actually. I had so little strength in my legs. But that meant I had to walk very, very slowly. And I walked very, very slowly to the park. I walked very, very slowly around the lake in the park. And I just look at everything around me. And I really did see things afresh. It's as if I was seeing them for the first time, because two things came together. One was the sense of my own impermanence, that I had a very serious disease which could kill me. I couldn't forget that. The treatments were pretty drastic and not easy to bear. But at the same time, I had a heightened awareness of beauty, and especially, of course, walking around the park. And I saw everything afresh. I saw things in the park that I'd never seen before, even though they'd always been there. And I saw them partly because I had to walk so slowly. I just didn't have the energy that I was used to. It slowed me down. And in slowing down, I could perceive the beauty by which I was surrounded. And I even had that experience in my own room upstairs in the community, in one of the two men's communities, the one that I live in. I live on the back of this building, and the outlook is not particularly pretty, but it was the view I had from my window. And a lot of the time I couldn't go outside. I couldn't do anything else. All I had was the view from that window. And I looked out that window for hour after hour after hour. And there were 3 trees I could see. Most of the rest is, I grant you, pretty ugly, but there were 3 trees. And I watched them through spring, well, emerging out of winter, through spring, through summer, into autumn. And I watched the subtle shifting of the changes of the colors of the leaves and so on and so forth. And at times I was deeply, deeply moved by it. And it was that sense of beauty even in the midst of ugliness, which I found really, really moved me and motivated me actually to keep going. But to keep going, that's another issue I wanted to talk about this evening. It's no use just having a purpose, even a higher purpose. You've got to keep going at it. Keep it before your mind. Remember it. Recollect your higher purpose. And frankly, in recent years, as I've gotten older and my body's become more and more wrecked. My body's a bit of a wreck at the moment, frankly. I could very easily do with a new one. I haven't applied for one yet, but no doubt sooner or later I will get one. But you start to wonder sometimes, is it worth it? I even thought after I'd gone through all my cancer treatment, was it worth it? I wasn't convinced that it was, but then I thought more deeply, and I thought, well, do I have anything to give? And I felt that I did have something to give. I have a lot of experience now. It's perhaps not a great deal in the wider perspective, but it's something. And it's something which some of my friends at least value. And I could give that. And that's what keeps me alive. I think without that, I'd probably just fade and go. That my life would now be meaningless without that. I want to live as long as I can so that I can give of what little experience and deeper understanding I've managed to gain from almost 50 years of practicing the Dharma. So that's what it means to have meaning in your life. Now, before we finish, because time is running out very, very, very rapidly, I want to say one more thing, and then we move on to what comes next. What comes next, you'll find very soon. One of the most fulfilling and therefore meaningful experiences for me as an order member has been the opportunity that I've had to teach in India. I've been there many times. I started going there first in 1987. And I've been there most years since, apart from the last 3 years when my health hasn't permitted me to go. No, the last 5 years, actually, not the last 3. It's something which I've never found particularly easy, but I've always found deeply rewarding. And even in the lockdown, I've been able, however, to continue with this every Saturday and Sunday for the last several weeks. I can't remember how many now, certainly over 2 months. I've been leading an online study group for people in India, and it's really helped me through the lockdown. I didn't lose my purpose. I didn't stop. I didn't give up the possibility of teaching altogether while I was away. I had that study group in India. I also have another study group which I was able to do through Zoom from the LBC. I mean, with the LBC. So that's how I've kept. That just gives you a flavour of what's given meaning to my life, that's what I'll continue to do until the day I drop, and it might not be much longer before I do. You never know when you reach my age. I haven't killed the cancer. It may yet kill me. It's in remission. I've got my eyes on it, but it's beyond my control, really. If it recurs, well, that's probably the beginning of the end. You just have to keep going, don't you? And what keeps me going is the higher meaning I have in life provided to me by the Dharma.
Would you picking up the thread of India?
Yes.
Would you say a bit more about something about the
situation in India now?
Also, or even just your time in India and why that was meaningful, or what's different from teaching here to teaching in India, or why is it significant?
Okay, well, I think it's particularly, it is very different in a number of ways. In principle, it's the same because everybody is still trying to do the same things. We will meditate, practice the precepts, go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But the people in India tend to come from, well, they're all mostly Dalits, not all, but mostly Dalits. Dalits are members of what used to be called the untouchable community. In other words, they were completely outside the caste system. They were social outcasts, and they were at the bottom of the social heap. They tended to be very, very poor people. They didn't have much opportunity in life. But because of their great leader, Dr. Ambedkar, who some of you no doubt will have heard, he gave them a way out of all that. He converted to Buddhism, it's through his legacy that we've been able to go back to India and help these people to come to a deeper understanding of the Dharma. And we have, of course, many, many order members and many centers in India now. And they really are serious practitioners. They very often practice under very, very difficult conditions which is very difficult for us to even imagine. But they do it. Yeah.
Well, and one of the reasons I'm interested in Devamitra's experience of India is this week at the London Buddha Centre. Rather than when you donate it coming to the London Buddha Centre, what we're asking this week is for you to donate to the Indian Dharma Trust. So all our donations this week will go to the work in India. So as Devamitra was saying, so Devamitra and I are both part of the Triratna Buddhist order. And our brothers and sisters in the order in India are really engaged with India, and they have been for a long time in the way Devamitra described. But also right now, it's, the effect of this pandemic in India is very, very different and much more keenly felt, perhaps, than the pandemic, the coronavirus situation here. So I've had quite a hard time with the coronavirus, but I've got pretty good situation. And in India right now, that really isn't the case.
No, I mean, there are quite a few people who don't even have enough food at the moment. But some of our brothers and sisters in the Dhamma over there in India have been helping them. They've been going out and distributing food for those who need it. So that's part of our response in India to the lockdown, the coronavirus pandemic. But more than that, they're also aware that people, even in time of crisis, perhaps even more so, need the Dharma. And they are engaging in online retreats, online classes and so forth. And a few of us in the West have been helping out, as I have been doing twice a week on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, so we'd really encourage you to give to the Indian Dharma Trust. And the way you do that is by using the link that I think either Sarah or Philippe have put in the, I think it's sort of Beckham saying, yes, it's done. So there's a link in the chat box, perhaps below, but on the Future Dharma Fund website. The important thing to note is that Future Dharma Fund is one of the funds of Triratna, and they're kind of in collaboration with the Indian Dharma Trust. So when you donate, it's really important that you click the button that says you want your money to go to the Indian Dharma Trust.
Yes, and it's worth pointing out too that the money that goes through to that fund is specifically for the to help support one of the members of the ordination team in India for a whole year. We're hoping to raise £3,000 so at least one member of that ordination team will be fully supported throughout this period. I know many of the order members involved in the ordination teams, and some of them are really good friends of mine, and they're very serious practitioners of the Dhamma. Absolutely, no question of that. So please do dig deep.
Yeah, so do use that link to give to the Indian Dharma Trust if you like, if you can, or even if you can't, still, I'm sure you could. So give. Yeah. Anyway, it's been really nice to sit here with you this evening, Devamitra. We've been exploring this topic of breaking through meaninglessness, and I really enjoyed at the beginning your encouragement to not block this kind of aggressive, powerful energy, but to kind of use it to break through something. But also this way you talked about meaninglessness, perhaps just being but being unsatisfactoriness of the ideals or the values of our lives not quite working anymore, or not quite going where we want, and this need to find something higher, to discover this beauty, this higher truth, the Dharma, and that's where you were talking about it. But also then the need to pursue that higher purpose, to keep going. So next week, we're leading a course, a sort of home retreat, as it were, called The Road to Full Potential. The Road to Full Potential. And a few weeks ago, it feels like months ago now, but I think it was only weeks ago, we led something that we called a home retreat at the London Buddhist Centre. It was really popular. And in my experience, really meaningful, and was all about breaking through into that meaning. It was practical, so it presented us with a meaning and also gave us the tools to break through into it. So I'd really recommend you sign up for that course, which again, I hope either Seb or Ippolit are putting in the chat box. So I'd really hope you sign up to that. If not, just go to londonbuddhistcentereonline.com. You can go there and sign up. The Road to Full Potential. So we really hope you sign up to that. And also, sorry if you've been asking questions in the chat box. I could have stopped Devamitra from speaking and asked the questions, but I didn't feel the need. I just wanted to hear what you had to say, and I found it really interesting. But I don't know whether we don't have time, but it's really good that you're all here. I hope you haven't bursting questions in the chat box. But yeah, thank you once again to you, Devamitra. I really enjoyed it. Do donate to the Indian Dharma Trust and sign up to the Road to Full Potential course next week. We hope to see you again soon.